Welcome back. It's once again time for Evolved Sales Live. I'm your host, Jonathan Fisher. Glad to have you back with us again.
Good
As
to
any
be
regular
here. Thank
listener
you.
to our show already knows, software as a service makes up one of the most dynamic and fast-growing sectors in all of business today. And by current estimates, there are some 30,000 SaaS companies worldwide, 17,000 of which are based in the U.S. In such a crowded space, one of the biggest challenges for any SaaS company is getting the attention of prospective customers and converting those interested prospects into buyers. This is largely a function of marketing communications, literally the words being used, and the copywriting skills of the marketing team serving your company can often make or break your results. Well, our guest today is an expert in the subject. Returning to visit with us once again is Alex Napier Holland. Alex is the founder of GorillaFlow, a boutique business services firm that specializes in creating high-performance sales copy, capable of driving revenue on autopilot. His work has launched products and boosted revenue for more than 90 SaaS companies and technology brands, and his clients include businesses of all types and sizes on 5 continents, including Adobe and Salesforce. Alex, we're stoked to have you on the show once again today. Welcome back.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so real quick reminder to our live audience as well, please take full advantage of the fact that we're right here with you. Send in your questions at the end of the show. We're going to have some live Q&A with Alex, get you some answers right here, right now with our expert guest. So begin sending in your questions into the chat even as we begin. So Alex, tell us again, for the sake of the guests that have missed you last time, a little bit more about what you do in your boutique consultancy there in terms of copywriting.
Yeah, so my focus nowadays is pretty much exclusively landing pages and home pages, subtle distinction between the two, and advertising copy. So it's very much around web-based content that's designed to achieve a specific goal. That goal is ultimately going to be revenue-based, revenue measured. So we're looking to get sales, we're looking to get signups, we're looking to get product demos. So essentially, it's a very bottom of the funnel when somebody's ready to convert.
Well, and so that's where a lot of the difference can be made in copywriting, it would seem, is where folks are in the space and need to be converted. But even getting their attention to begin with, all of that, all the way down the funnel, there's probably a need for good copywriting skills. I'm sure you would agree. Maybe we could start where I always like to start. What are the issues now? As an expert in this area of copywriting, you're looking at the website of a client that needs your service. You're seeing a lot of mistakes being made. Why don't we start just more generally speaking? What are some of the issues going on that are problematic?
I mean, there's a variety of areas we could explore. I think for today, I'd like to focus on one in particular, what I call founder copy. And I want to be really clear here that I don't want anybody to think of founder copy as being a bad thing at all. Founder copy is a necessary stage in any business life cycle. So founder copy is, as the name suggests, copy that's typically been written by a founder. And I'd say not just me, but probably most experienced sales copywriters can pick up on founder copy almost instantly. It's copy that's been written by somebody who's clearly very close to the product. It's typically very technical, very feature oriented. It tells you a lot about what the product does, although often lacking context and broader awareness. It's typically very lacking in human impact. So why are we doing this? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? What does that problem feel like? Empathizing with a problem, and then selling somebody not just for solution from a technical perspective, but both from an emotional perspective. What is a sense of reassurance that you might be getting, but also almost as well an ideological perspective in some ways, demonstrating that your values as a business are aligned with theirs. So yeah, typically the structure of a website is often pretty good. A lot of the time when I get what I call founder copy, the underlying structure and journey that the founder, the CEO has taken somebody on is fairly legit. It's just the way that they talk to the customer. And sometimes they haven't spoken to the customers enough. Quite often, though, it's not that. They've spoken to the customers, but they haven't sufficiently collected and organized the intelligence the customers have given them and then built that into the copy. in a nutshell, they're making a lot of assumptions. They assume that when they say, this is what the product does, that somebody will innately know that's great, that's important, I know I need that. Because they're too close for product. If I was to set up a SaaS business, or if any other copywriter was to set up a SaaS business, we'd probably still experience this issue. And in fact, actually, it's often really smart, really bright people with a very engineering mindset that do this even more, because they high IQ, they're smart, they know the product. They just assume people know things that they don't.
Yeah, that is a common error among high intelligence individuals, is that to them, makes so much sense they don't think it needs to be mentioned again, and a
Absolutely.
lot of technical jargon can get in the way. So you've broken this down in your work with clients over the years into 5 copywriting sins. So a little bit of a facetious way to structure the conversation. There's no moral or ethical concern that we're talking about here. But if you really want things to go well, and I guess if we're talking about that means get the best results, right? That means get the best response in terms of the digital advertising that's being done, and getting the highest conversions of those who end up on your landing pages or websites. First of all, do I have the definition pretty close? Would you add to that?
No, that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair. I mean, a lot of the time, people overcomplicate these things, but at the end of the day, it comes down to someone is landing on an asset, somebody's landing on a page, a piece of content, and you have a specific goal that you'd like them to complete. They're landing here. We need to get them there. How can we get them there? It's pretty much that simple.
That's it. All right. Well, without further ado, let's begin. So you've given me these 5 sins. The first one is not first talking to customers. Tell us more about that one.
Yeah, as I alluded to previously, sometimes the problem is that founders or marketers aren't talking to their customers. Sometimes they're talking to their customers, but they're not formalizing that process and really making use of the conversations. Ironically, I often find support teams are better at this than marketers. Support teams are often, if you don't regularly speak to your support team as a founder, I would recommend doing that, because they're often a wealth of knowledge. So yeah, essentially it's about talking to your customers regularly, whether that is via surveys, or which are great for scale, but conversations too, because from a qualitative point of view, you can get deeper answers, you can get more relevant and meaningful answers. And a lot of the time, it's not necessarily, sometimes you'll find somebody who's using your product in a way that you didn't understand, you didn't predict. That's one thing. A lot of the time, though, customers are using your product in a way that you might expect, but there's value tucked away in how they're using it that you hadn't anticipated. It's the benefit you knew they would be enjoying, but they give you color, they give you more organic flesh, so to speak, to put onto it. What's the business impact of having that particular feature in their lives, for example? So as I said, it's about having those conversations, but crucially, it's about having some sort of a process by which you collect that information into, say, a Google Sheet. And then you break it down, and you could break it down, for example, into different stages of a purchase journey. Is this customer talking about how they first encountered our brand and what they thought? Is a customer talking about their evaluation process when they compared our product to somebody else's and why they chose us? Perhaps a customer is talking about their ongoing experience using the product. Perhaps they're talking about their experience with our customer support team, because that's a really big part of a SaaS product. It's not just the software itself, it's the quality of the support as well. And by collecting that information, then looking to create a hierarchy. So you can do it quantitatively, literally going through all of the quotes and counting how many times people mention a particular feature. And from a quantitative perspective, saying this is the most popular feature, this is the second most popular feature. And often that hierarchy in terms of which features your product has is pretty different to the one that you think customers might have. But then qualitatively, divvying up, counting particular words that get used. What are the words and the phrases and the expressions that customers use when they talk about how much they love our product? And very simply, you use that to sell your product. The best sales copy is when you take language and words that customers who love your product use, and use that in your website. And we call that a customer voice, developing a customer voice.
Well, on this show, we've had many conversations with those who've shared the insight that even the development of the application itself needs to be done in direct feedback loop with the using public, with the buyers. And so it sounds like you're actually saying this needs to be a roundtable where, hey, the whole marketing team, not just sales, not just feedback from customer coming from the sales efforts, but even the copywriting piece itself should have some direct access to all that as well. Is that kind of a fair characterization?
Yeah, I think as I alluded to in a previous episode as well, it's difficult as a copywriter to stay in our silo. We end up wandering into development and other areas. And when a company isn't using customer intelligence to inform its marketing, that worries me quite a lot because there's two things. Either A, they're collecting customer intelligence in terms of their development process, which is crucial in any kind of agile development process, but they're not sharing it with marketing. So we've got a siloed marketing and development setup. That's not great, but that's something you can bridge. The bigger worry is that nobody's collecting customer intelligence and the product roadmap is being pulled out of thin air, or so to speak, or certainly the product roadmap isn't based on customer feedback, and new features that are being developed aren't being put straight in front of customers. So often what we do as copywriters can potentially point to and diagnose systemic issues within a company in terms of a breakdown between marketing, development, sales in particular, and even support. Oh. Sorry, Jonathan, I just lost you there. I apologize.
I'm sorry about that. Sin number two.
My AirPods just came back.
Yeah, no, you know what? That's on me.
Okay.
So, copywriting sin number 2 sounds like it would segue pretty well from what you just said there, Alex, that sin number 2 is not first mapping out who are your stakeholders before you even get into that. Tell us more about that. Does that relate to do I have that right, or am I off base? That relates to kind of who are the folks that are involved in the whole process internally?
Well, yeah, in a sense. I mean, stakeholders in terms of your client stakeholders. So it's flipping it around. This is one of my favorite topics. So when it comes to B2B and enterprise is another beast. There are other things to worry about of enterprise, but particularly just for B2B sales, the big difference between B2B and B2C is that it's multi-stakeholder. So back in my sales days, I spent 6 years in international sales for SaaS brands. I have seen sales reps stand up, deliver a great presentation that was designed for the end users of a product, and somebody in deployment in IT who their motivation may not have been entirely honest. That person may have just not wanted to deal with deploying and setting up and migrating to a new application. Someone in deployment would say, well, yeah, but can your product do this? And can your product do that? And throw at them technical questions about its data storage policies, for example, and make that sales rep look stupid and ruin the deal. That's one extreme example. But if I'm trying to sell a product, I'm worrying about the end user and how they use the product. I'm looking at C-suite. Is this product aligned with C-suite strategic goals? C-suite don't necessarily care if a product's slightly clunky to use. They care about whether it's aligned with a long-term strategy of their business. Finance department are concerned about the affordability of a product, and crucially from accounting purposes as well, what are the payment terms? I mean, America's had a change in its accounting legislation or regulations just a year ago that was mainly driven by SaaS brands and recurring revenue, but also compliance for finance as well, legal compliance, and then the big one, IT and deployment. So how is the data stored? So many SaaS deals get sunk because the data isn't stored and encrypted and kept in a manner that meets either their own internal stipulated processes or potentially even legislative frameworks as well that they have by virtue of being in the United States of the European Union, serious pressure to comply with. And in terms of compliance with financial and data protection rules, that only gets stricter and stricter. So from a sales copy point of view, we're predominantly selling to the end user, but we need to think about how do we involve these other people on the journey? At what point will finance, at what point will C-suite get involved in this conversation? Which pages are for them? Which content's for them? How should we talk to those people? We're going to use different language to speak to somebody in C-suite. We're going to use different language to speak to an end user. And so just like any sales team would, a good sales team maps out each of the people in the buying process, the things they care about, the language they use. And again, if sales and marketing are aligned, that sort of conversation should be taking place naturally. But if your website for a SaaS brand, particularly if it's B2B, is purely focused on the end user, that might get you started, but you're more likely to run into roadblocks later. And again, as a sales guy, what I used to do was identify the people involved in a purchase process in advance. I'd call up the people in deployment in advance and work out their concerns and worries. I've sold to the IT team before I turn up and do my sales demo. Yeah. And so you need to do the same thing with your copy and your content. How can we reach these particular people and get them on board as well, so they don't just sync for product because they're not that fussed about the usability. They're not going to be using it directly.
Well, and is there a similar concern with getting even the overall marketing piece aligned? There are different players there as well, right? There are the folks that are doing the art. There's somebody who's probably in charge of marketing strategically, whether that's a biz dev officer or however they might be structured. And then the copywriting kind of comes in, especially in your case, you're coming in as a boutique, a consultant providing this as a service. Are there issues there where there can be friction or there's there can be a misalignment?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, less for me nowadays in a fairly senior position. Definitely when you're starting out, I mean, copy should absolutely lead. Copy comes before anything else. Copy comes before design. It's interesting that actually there are some pretty big, expensive agencies that don't get this, that will spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 developing a website, and then they spend $4,000 or $5,000 in copy at the end. And it's as if they're sprinkling hundreds and thousands, whatever you guys call them. They're putting sprinkles over their food afterwards with words. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about words here. We're talking about a structure and a strategy and a journey. Each of the sections, somebody lands on the hero section of a website with a specific set of ideas, a specific set of values and problems, and a low level of understanding of your product. We want to get them to the bottom feeling stoked, excited, motivated, and crucially, like they are dealing with somebody who understands and cares about and respects them. How do we get there? And so before you even think about writing the words, I mean, I always use the building a house analogy. We're not talking about interior design here. We're talking about architecture. A good copywriter is an architect. They're designing the foundations, the building, so this thing doesn't fall over when there's high wind. In some senses, a high-level copywriter could actually hand over the writing bit to somebody else to do. The bit that we do that's valuable is all of the stuff leading up to the writing. The writing is about 20, 30, probably 30% of what I do now. And as you get more senior, you do a bit less writing and a bit more strategy. And I know some copywriters I'm networked with who no longer write and just do the strategy and outsource the copy. So
that makes sense. That makes sense. It's the strategy is what wins wars, and it's understanding the strategy that makes the big difference in business as well. So you say that the sin number 3 then is not first defining the CTA for any given page. That kind of speaks to understanding what is the overall strategic purpose in a given application of the copywriting skill. Tell us more about that. What do you see that's done wrong there, and what do you recommend to fix it?
Yeah, this is a funny one. I've got no doubt that there are plenty of people watching this podcast who'd get this one right off the bat. What is the point of this page? Why does it exist? How do we want people to respond to it? But sometimes this doesn't come up. People have this loose idea of talking about a product, of presenting the product. And they've not actually, I ask them, okay, well, what's the call to action, the CTA? And they say, well, we haven't really thought about that. And the call to action itself will change the structure, the journey. It will change the tone, the language. It comes down a lot to risk. If you're trying to ask somebody to hand over, say, for example, $2,000 off the bat, versus asking somebody, hey, take something for a 7-day free trial, there's a huge difference in risk there. there's a lot more, and it should go without saying, there's a lot more you're going to have to do, a lot more ground you'll have to cover to get someone comfortable handing over a large amount of cash. This is something fairly easy to fix. It's just, deciding on a CTA or deciding that you need to set a CTA for each page is fairly straightforward. Choosing your CTA, there's more complexity there. It depends upon your business model. Obviously, if it's a self-serve SaaS, if you're looking at something like a B2C like Spotify or Netflix, it's an absolute no-brainer. You're going to give somebody a free trial first. It comes down to the cost to your business as well. If you are giving somebody a free trial, short of some AWS fees, which are probably cents, there's no problem with giving a free trial. Obviously, when you're talking about a high-level enterprise product where there is inherently a need for onboarding and for talking somebody through your product, that definitely, you might think about filtering there. You might think about qualifying people and asking them questions to identify if it's worth your time dealing with them. Another issue here that I've come up against when I'm working with fairly technical products. There are some products that are very good, but you know that if you gave it to a customer, the UX probably isn't its strongest point. And if you throw a customer a free trial, they might not really understand the benefits. For somebody to get the most out of your product, you need somebody they need to be shown around. Yes, it's a little bit clunky, and you might not find the best features on the first go around. So in that instance, if you're doing 10, 15, half-hour webinars, again, you might think about filtering too as well.
And I think that really applies like page by page, as you say, right? Like even a good, strong about me or about us page on a website can be sitting there and kind of useless, like that boring threefold brochure on the corner table, or it can have some oomph to it if you use it properly. I'm curious, what do you find are some ways you can utilize that page on a website?
Yeah, when it comes to about us pages, I think there is a way of talking about yourself and your journey that isn't self-indulgent, but's helpful. You can talk about yourself and your journey. People write autobiographies that are helpful to other people. You're saying, I've had this journey, I've had, this is where we came from. But you focus on problems that drove you to create a product that are relatable to other customers. So using your About Us page to build empathy, to be relatable, and again, to demonstrate the values of your business as well. It's not just about, bragging or boasting, and definitely not giving people sob stories. It's about demonstrating the DNA, the ethos of your business. So that when people land on an About Us page, they think, wow, that's somebody like me. Maybe a bit of humor in there as well. That's somebody I'd like to get a beer with, somebody I'd like to get a drink with. Just to slightly swing back as well, we were talking about CTAs. One important thing to bear in mind as well, or one tip maybe, would be having 2 CTAs is totally fine. 2 CTAs for a high risk and a low risk is very common. Okay. One smart tactic, or one reason this works well, is because when you ask somebody yes or no, or you say to somebody, do you want to do this? There's one call to action. Essentially, the answers are yes and no. Whereas when you throw 2 choices at somebody, psychologically, you're giving them a choice 1 and a choice 2. Some would argue, some tests suggest they're more likely to pick one of those 2. The no, I don't want either becomes a third option at that point. Mm-hmm. So it could be buy the product today, or it could be take it for a free trial, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there other examples of multiple calls to action on a page?
I'd keep it to 2. I think there are various studies around this. 3 is where it starts, but 3 is when it starts to get confusing. You might have 3, 4, 5 pricing tiers, but typically I'd stick with 2 call to actions. If you think about it from your customers, you've got the customers who are stoked and excited. They're the ones that are more likely to choose a high risk. And then those that are interested but hesitant, giving them something to slightly remove the risk without making it look like it's a better deal to put people off taking the second high risk option.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you can do this either or close, which salespeople have talked about for many decades, right? Probably at different levels all the way through, working people through the funnel. Like even you mentioned the different rates and tiers of purchasing in on a SaaS product. There could be 3 to 5 of those, but usually they got one of them that's kind of highlighted. So it still kind of makes it an either or. It's like that one or any of the others, right? It's almost still a binary. With that, do you like that methodology? What are your feelings on that as a professional?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's things that work and things that I feel some aspects of SaaS pricing start to make me occasionally feel slightly uncomfortable.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a SaaS founder myself. I understand it's a pretty tough game. I mean, for example, one of the common strategies, you have free pricing tiers. You
Yeah.
have decided in advance from crunching the numbers that tier 2 is where you see most of the growth of your business. That's the
Mm-hmm.
best for you in terms of the customer lifetime value. You'll set a tier 1 that is slightly less expensive, but has a lot
Mm-hmm.
less features. So it's a complete no-brainer to go from the $20 a month to a $25 a month and get all these
Right.
extra features. And then you've got $75 a month for something that is, it's not that it's not a good product, but it will be probably not represent as good value. It will
Mm-hmm.
be better. There will be some customers that might have a legitimate reason for using this particular product, but you deliberately price it highly so that the middle tier seems like the obvious logical choice. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I mean, when it comes to pricing, I have opinions on pricing,
Well,
but
maybe
there
we
are
can circle back to some
consultants.
of those here. I think we'll come back to pricing in our
I'm not
Q&A
an
because that
expert
is
on that though.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it.
sure.
Let's knock out our last two sins very quickly. So covering copywriting sin number 4. This is not first considering how your customers will arrive. Customers, I guess we're being a bit assumptive. We're really talking about folks online landing on a page, right? They got there, however they got there. They got there from a paid ad. They got there organically, but here they are. And I guess that I backed my way into that, didn't I? This is the very question you're talking about, not considering that. Tell us more.
Yeah, so it depends. If they're coming from paid adverts, for example, I mean, one of the cardinal sins I did not put down on here, I think this is fairly well known. You should never, ever, ever send an advertising customer to your homepage. The difference between a landing page and a homepage, a homepage serves a variety of different goals.
Yeah.
You've got your menu across the top. And to me, it's a little bit like saying to somebody, hey, it's my birthday in Chicago. Do you want to come? Cool. And that's it. And you're
Yeah.
hoping they find your house in Chicago, or maybe a particular street in Chicago to be more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a landing page is saying it's at 27 South Boulevard. Here's a map. I've drawn it for you, and I'm sending the car to
Right.
pick you up. In terms of taking them to your goal. So if you're running a paid traffic campaign, at the very least, you're sending somebody to a purpose-designed page that has no hyperlinks anywhere. The only thing you can do on that page is engage with a call to action, possibly 2 call to actions. Ideally, what you're doing in an ideal world, and you probably won't do this straight away, but if your marketing operations become sophisticated, if you have 5 or 10 different levers that you're trying to pull in sorry, hit the microphone there. If you have 5 or 10 levers that you're trying to pull in terms of things that people care about, you'll then have 5 or 10 optimized landing pages that relate to the advert. Somebody has clicked on an advert because they care about that very specific thing that was in the advert copy. If you then serve them up a generic landing page, that might work. But if you give them a landing page that's finely tuned for that particular sub niche, sub audience that cares about that specific thing, you're likely to get better results. Going back to home pages, which are, again, should not be getting paid traffic sent to them. They predominantly coming from search engines, but also referrals. So are people landing there from search queries? If you look at those keywords they're landing from, do those keywords suggest, because again, the 2 most important things in sales copywriting are problem awareness and solution awareness. Problem awareness, how aware is our audience they even have this problem in the first place? Typically, we don't tend to deal with people with a low level of problem awareness. They don't tend to fall into our nets particularly easily, and they're very hard to sell to. But we deal with a lot of people that have low and high levels of solution awareness. So somebody understands a problem, and they might have a moderate level of problem awareness, but I can push on that and increase their comprehension of how that problem is affecting their business. There's a bit of variability there, but solution awareness varies a lot. And do the keywords that customers are engaging with indicate they have a very strong understanding of who's in the market, who our competitors are? Do those keywords imply that they're shopping around for solutions and they really know what they're talking about? Or do they have a very low level of awareness? They don't even understand there are solutions like ours in the
Hmm.
first place. That's going to completely change how you talk to your customers. You have to,
Hmm.
in some sense, educate them, get them up to
Right.
speed. A lot of it's just empathizing with the problems they're experiencing now, but then you have to
Sure.
draw the dots to the solution, and that
Hmm.
path will be different depending on their level of solution awareness.
This is some high level stuff. I mean, not all buyers' journeys are created equally, are they? I mean, people have a
No.
different level of awareness, different things that are triggering them to want to buy, different ways they're going to make that decision to buy. And I don't think there's very many companies that have all these concerns very well integrated, from the marketing piece to the design development piece in terms of the website itself to the work of folks like yourself who are specialists in the language. This is some really good stuff, some very valuable stuff, probably worthy of even more time, but we're going to move on for the sake of time. Copywriting sin number 5 is not first deciding how to measure success. This is also done very generically. There's a lack of integration often between marketing and the sales team in terms of what is going to lead to the best results. And once again, I think you're going to agree there's a similar need for alignment here as well, that we understand, what does success really mean? Is it clicks? It's not clicks. It's not page views. It's not that kind of stuff, is it? It's something much more important than that to the business endeavor. Tell us more.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most regularly discussed topics in marketing, is the need to further integrate marketing and sales. And in some senses, when I bring it up, I almost feel like I say it's an overdone topic, but it's obviously not, because this is still a massive, pervasive problem. We need to keep talking about it. So my background, I spent 6 years in sales before I shifted into marketing. So I was surprised when I came into marketing how much more people talk about, vanity metrics than they do about revenue.
Yeah.
Clicks and likes. And the thing is, you've
Right.
got clicks and likes, which are vanity metrics, but we've now got another layer and another tier of, MQLs, for example, marketing qualified leads, more sophisticated marketing metrics, but nonetheless still not cold, hard cash. Why
Right.
is that? There's a problem there. And there's various reasons for that. Some are cultural, some are technical. But if your business isn't able to, you can't fully quantify the real business impact of every campaign. But if you can't take some sort of stab at that, I'll be pretty worried. But yeah, a lot of this is, first of all, deciding from a strategic point of view, what are we measuring? How do we measure success? And obviously cash is one of them, but then setting up the tools as well. And it's really surprising, like a lot of people in your podcast, I could drop stories and name names, but I wouldn't do that because that wouldn't be professional. There are some very, very big companies that you would imagine really have their stuff together that don't have basic tracking set up. And
Yeah.
something else I wanted to say slightly earlier was that I don't want any of this to intimidate your customers, in the sense when I talk about campaigns that have multiple levers that are targeting a lot of different types of user concerns, and different landing pages targeting each of them. This is advanced stuff. You can get really great results with a simple marketing campaign. Don't beat yourself up if you're not doing this right now, and don't overcomplicate things. Try and run a simple marketing campaign and get good results. And then you get to this area through iteration and optimization. But there are some very, very big brands. I am a big Nike fan, as you might have noticed. I've got a few trainers back there. I love Nike, favorite brand. But they market girls' clothes to me on Facebook. I get adverts in my feed for girls' trainers. Part of this is the fact that Nike is such a huge brand. They have so much traffic coming in, so much presence. But if Nike has an underperforming Facebook campaign, I don't know what percentage of their business that is, but it's a lot smaller than if I was launching a footwear brand from scratch today as a small player. But there are some really big companies running very poorly optimized campaigns.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to continue the conversation, and we're going to integrate some Q&A here shortly. But very quickly, I want to mention our show's fantastic sponsor, and that is, as always, Overpass, your leading source for hiring pre-vetted talent. If you need to hire a team of remote sales professionals and you got to do it fast, Overpass makes building a high-quality team quick and easy. There are thousands of qualified candidates you can choose from, filter by industry and experience at lightning speed, and get people interviewed and hired in just 2 days. Create your free account today at overpass.com. Hey, before we jump into our Q&A, Alex, I'd love to go ahead and share with folks that may have to depart the live portion here today. How can they do more with you after today's conversation? What's the best way to respond?
You're welcome to reach out to me. My website is GorillaFlow.com. There's a form there, or you could simply email me directly, alex@GorillaFlow.com. If you would like to get a quick 10 to 15 minute teardown of what I think of your homepage or landing page and potential improvements and optimizations you can make, I would be very happy to do that. You can simply pop to GorillaFlow.com, skim to the bottom and use a form. That form occasionally misbehaves. If it does, just type in alex@GorillaFlow.com and just say free teardown and pop the URL of the page if you'd like me to give you a review on. And I'll be happy to send that over within 7 to 10 days via Loom.
Love it. So for the non-UK oriented English speakers, teardown is not a bad thing. It means he's going to break it down. What is good and bad could be improved and provide that in the form of a video review of your site. Do I have that right, Alex?
Absolutely. Yeah. Teardown is quite a nasty word for a nice thing. Yeah.
No, well, I mean, it's one of those things, right? The Anglosphere, we have various ways we say these things. I love it. So let's jump into some questions here. Been a fantastic conversation already, and something I think we could go far deeper into. I want to go ahead and I'm going to take first dibs as the fearless host, and I want to circle back to that whole pricing thing. I want you to finish your thought on that, if you would, on how SaaS companies are offering different tiers and their pricing structure.
Yeah, so I guess as a caveat for all of this, there are consultants who do nothing but pricing. There's whole books written on this topic. There's complex formulas used for this. I would say my opinion on pricing is worth more than an average person walking down the street. I understand the psychology of sales reasonably well, but there's a lot to do with scalability and that sort of thing that's a bit out of my range. I think my feeling on this is that I always try to be motivated by what's doing the customer favors, what's helping the customer. I see some tactics being used, creating pricing tiers that basically probably shouldn't exist and are there just to confuse and obfuscate. From a kind of ideological perspective or maybe an ethical perspective, I tend to think that when you do things in marketing that are motivated by short-term quick returns and taking advantage of people, whatever you gain in the short term is typically outweighed by the long-term negative of kind of dirtying your brand a bit. Versus when you try and help people and add value, I think the long-term payback from that is almost invariably superior. So when it comes to designing pricing tiers, yes, I come across clever tactics that you can use to push people one way or another. I'm not going to tell somebody not to do that. My job isn't to decide their pricing tier for them. My job is to build up engagement and excitement about a product and help people understand it. But if someone wants my 5 or 10 cents, I would design pricing tiers that address and are based on customer feedback and give people the features they actually want. The CRM I use that I like, I am not a gold or platinum customer because the gold or platinum customers are enterprise brands. I'm not going to pay $5,000 a month for a one-person business.
Right.
Calendly, I pay for Pro because it's $12 versus $15. It's not a big deal. But the pricing tier for this particular CRM and I use, I'm probably only on 2 out of 4. They've carefully designed that pricing tier not to try and make me buy a $5,000 a month CRM, but I will never pay for. It's purposefully designed for small businesses with 1 to 2 people. That's me.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So, yeah.
Here's a question from a copywriter in the audience. Lindy's asking, after buyer research is complete, you really have you got a good bead on who is your ICP. What are some good pointers on how to position your copy to attract your ICP? So I guess sort of some broad, maybe strategic advice.
That's a great question. I think a lot of it is about, so first of all, understanding the individual pain points and concerns they have. I think if we're talking about B2B, which is where I spend pretty much all my time nowadays, that starts from a technical place, in the sense of understanding the technical problem somebody's experiencing, or the technical framework for legislation that they're worried. If somebody works in accounting, they work in finance, that's not a drone or a robot. That's somebody who's worried, who goes to sleep at night worrying about the fact that they might not have been compliant with a piece of legislation, and that could come back to bite them and it could affect their career. So understanding from a technical point of view, what are the things they care about? That's sort of the framework of a skeleton. Building out the flesh on that, what is the language that kind of person tends to use? What are the phrases they tend to use? You might know they're worried about not achieving compliance, for example, but how do they really express that? And you'll get that by talking to as many of these people as possible. What I would recommend is a book by Jennifer Harris, Finding the Right Message. I would tell anybody who works in copywriting, frankly in marketing, Finding the Right Message by Jennifer Harris is an amazing purchase for anybody who wants to swat up and develop some pretty practical, pretty easy to use and really effective customer interview techniques, and in particular techniques to sort and analyze and organize your customer intel to make it useful for your business.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Dennis was asking if you would recommend putting end users into like your agile team. What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting question. So I mean, I'm not an agile expert or a trainer. I'm a former sales guy. I spent most of my career in sales before marketing. I have been involved in agile processes. I couldn't confidently state what the latest and greatest and most proven strategies are. All I could say as a salesman turned marketer, your agile process should absolutely involve customers in an ongoing basis. I had a call just 3 hours ago. I am a customer of a really great tab management app. And the founder of that company has probably 3, 4, 5 times reached out to me and said, hey, I'm developing another new feature. Can you take a look at it? There's, I think, 3 different SaaS brands at the moment, 3 different SaaS products where I'm one of in their pool of people they like to put these features in front of. And honestly, I really don't care about the $20 Amazon gift vouchers. They're nice. I care about the fact that I get to shape this product that I already love and use every single day. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you build them into your agile process. That's outside my expertise, but you definitely need to be talking to your customers a lot.
Good advice. Well, final question. We have some good eyes in the audience. Michael Novick is asking, is that a Fender?
That is a Fender Telecaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got this in Portugal, Paul Reed Smith in Bali that I left for 3 months. It's turned into 2 to 3 years courtesy of COVID and lockdown, and 4 or 5 in the UK. So I just build offices and leave guitars in various continents when I travel and hope they're still there when I get back.
Well, it sounds like we know what kind of entertainment we're going to have if somebody's hanging out with you. So there you go.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, it's been as it was a previous visit, extremely informative, really good, useful, actionable nuggets for those in the area of marketing for their businesses. Thanks once again for adding value to our audience.
I really enjoyed it. It was great. Thanks for having me on.
And thanks to all of our many audience members. You're making this show a great success. Please tell your friends. Come back, same time, same station next week. That's going to do it for today. Thanks again for being here. Signing off.